The sun beams more solar energy onto Earth per hour than humans can use in a year. 30% of that energy reflects back into space. The Air Force Research Lab is working to transform space-based solar power into a usable energy source for national defense and the general public by 2025. Andrew Williams is Deputy Technology Executive Officer at the Air Force Research Lab. Andrew, welcome to the program.
Thanks, happy to be here.
So explain to us first in non-technical terms how this would work. How will a satellite collect power from the sun, convert it, and then send it to Earth?
Right, so the approach with space solar power that we are working on at AFRL is to put a large deployable structure on orbit that uses solar arrays and photovoltaic conversion, which is basically taking the energy of the sun and turning that into electricity. And then in a very thin sandwich panel, we take that electrical energy from the sun, convert it into RF energy or radio frequency energy, and we basically beam that down to the ground where you can receive it with a rectifying antenna on the ground. It's a little like how you would charge your phone, except from doing it from really far away and using the sun as the power source in order to get that energy.
So Andrew, what's the efficiency of that conversion chain that you talked about? Like if I start with 1 watt of solar, what do I get at the end?
It's pretty low right now, and that's the reason why we're really focused at developing the technology at AFRL. We're right now in about the 2 to 5%, trying to get to about the 15% range. But to try to put that in perspective, a lot of that is just lost in the solar array efficiency. Solar arrays, state of the art, operate about 33%. So the sun generates a lot of energy, but it takes a lot of work to try to convert that to usable power that we can actually use on the ground. Hence the reason why we need a fairly large structure on orbit and actually to get in order to get usable power on the ground.
You know, the idea of harvesting solar power and delivering it to Earth has been studied for decades. What's new now?
There's a few things that have changed. Mostly it is focused at improving the deployable structures technologies that we have. We've advanced that considerably. Our ability to create a thin sandwich panel that does the direct solar energy conversion from the sun to RF so that we can beam it to the ground really allows us to create a much smaller package that we can launch on orbit. Contributing as well is the reduction that commercial has been in providing launch costs. And that has been beneficial so that we can put larger structures on orbit for a lower cost and start to be more competitive with those energy technologies on the ground, especially when you consider how hard and how expensive it is to get a gallon of diesel fuel into a forward operating base. And that's really what we're trying to drive after.
That's what I was going to ask you about, is why is this attractive to the Defense Department?
Right, and that it is looking to power forward operating bases, disadvantaged users out in the field, where it's not always easy to get electrical power, especially when you're carrying batteries and things like that. The other advantage that we have and why we're interested in the Department of Defense is that it's day-night, it is all weather. We can beam the RF through clouds, through storms, and so instead of putting a solar array on the ground, if we actually beam it from space, we always have access to that power. Additionally, there is a human cost that we have to worry about when we actually try to deliver supplies to the front lines, and supply chains are always a challenge. And so getting the diesel out to the field or puts people's lives at risk. If we can actually beam that power from space, then we might be able to actually save service member lives that may be lost in transporting that fuel to a forward operating base or location.
And what about for the U.S. Space Force? Would this have an impact with their mission and operations?
We're evaluating whether or not we can actually use power beaming to go from satellite to satellite, but we already have a pretty efficient solar array approach up in space. What we're really looking at is how can we drive a new space application that would have advantage to the DoD user on the ground. We're also exploring other things like commercial applications. We think this may be similar to like GPS, where there is a military application, but there's always also a really useful civilian application. And so beaming power to any place where you don't necessarily have an easy wall plug to get into. So natural disaster relief, people hiking out in the mountains, all sorts of things that could create new commercial applications if we could actually beam power anywhere on the planet at any time, day or night.
Well, Andrew, is there a chance that this technology won't even work in the end, or are you pretty confident?
We're confident that the technology will work overall, but there are significant challenges that we still have to work through. And that's why it's really a good project for the Air Force Research Lab. There's really 5 areas that we have to improve upon: power generation, deployable structures, thermal control, and the power beaming and the actual forming of the RF panel. We think we can do it all, but we're taking a step approach in order to do that, starting with a small panel and building it up to a large array that we actually have to do on orbit. Really, to get to usable power, we have to improve our current technology by 3 orders of magnitude, which is not easy, but it is doable.
All right, well, Andrew, thanks so much for being on the program. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any future Government Matters interviews.